primarily today, I'll explain this in a second. So doing that and that. I'll explain the madness here in a minute. The purpose of today is, as you kind of get into this environment, high intensity, high paced, a lot of activity, a lot of things you can do, I want to talk about how you can take some time and actually make sure you establish a cadence so that you can continually check in on where you're going. So the first place that I want to go with that, does that feel done? You feel like I covered the purpose of our meeting? Okay. You guys are the audience, you get to accept stuff. Did I introduce myself well enough? Okay, between me and Eugene. All right.
You're going to get these two companies down later. So.
Yeah, well, I can do that now. Would you like to put this one back in doing? Okay. Oh, you're the audience.
Why did you accept it?
You get to accept the cards as they fly by. I actually started more than that, but I started one when I was about 16, doing a consultancy company, which I grew up into, for a 16-year-old, pretty profitable company. I was buying a lot of electronics gear and created a recording studio in my basement, and all my friends were like, where are you getting this? I'm like, well, I have a job. I have my own company. So that was the first kind of taste of that. Back when I was 9, I started programming software, started writing code. At 13, my grandparents ran a pretty successful business. And right when desktop publishing was happening, I developed some software that they really needed that didn't exist in the current kind of new Mac systems and whatnot. And a couple of people said, hey, I'd love to buy that from you. And I thought, wow, I could actually make money doing what I love to do. And so at 13 is when I really got the entrepreneurial bug of writing software, shipping it commercially, and making money from it. So the two companies I started after that was, as I left Cork, I started a company which we sold pretty quickly to Creo, which is a publicly, or was at the time, publicly traded Vancouver company. So I got to be kind of a diversification strategy to this massive multinational public company. Grew that up to about 50 or so folks. Then the recession hit. They shut down all U.S. operations because they were based in Canada. So I was like, okay, I'll go do something else now. Pulled some of the IP back out of that, started another company, and then spent about 16 months developing that and trying to sell it to one of the largest software companies in the world, which I'll get into later on how that ended up. So that's a little teaser for later. Acceptable now? All right. All right, working agreements. I'll explain a little bit of kind of what this is about. So you've got lunch in front of you. Working agreements are typically kind of the agreement between the people in a meeting. I kind of consider us all here, well, not exactly a meeting, but a presentation. So I teach a lot at CU, and I'm used to like everybody having a laptop open. So you're already like way ahead of them from an attention span standpoint, which is good. Normally we make some kind of agreements about electronics by exception, be present, things like that. Again, what I'm trying to do here is model how to maybe you want to run your meetings, and we'll get into this later. But working agreements are those agreements you set as a team when you sit down to meet. Mainly today, my working agreement is I'm not using slides today. I'll just kind of do this all analog. Are there any working agreements in the audience that you'd like to have in the room as we get going? Or I should say, what working agreements? Hold applause to the end, okay. Yes, please ask questions as you go. So this is kind of setting up the social norm of the room here. It's what working agreements do. What else? Okay, thank you. Limit distractions. I'll try not to be distracted too. Occasionally I may like tap on my iPad for a second. Please, yes. We'll do the, my kids are in elementary school. My younger one still has to ask permission. My older one can go whenever he wants. So you've reached that point in life. All right, I've also got a couple things here. Actions. So if any actions come out of here based on something I say or something the audience says, I've got sticky notes and a pen up here. I'll note them, stick them up here. Decisions. If decisions happen in the room, we can note them here. And then if the questions don't feel like they serve the whole room, I'll write them down and put it in a parking lot, and then we can come back to that either at the end or after the presentation. So those are some of the working agreements, and I skipped ahead and did the tools in the room as well. At a certain point, you may want to have a pen as well, because I'm going to hand out a sheet of paper. You may want to take some notes on. So if you want to grab a pen or have somebody go grab 30 pens, that would be good. Awesome. All right, what questions do you have about those two? That was everything, yep. So I'll cover this here on the tracking work and tracking knowledge sections. So I do have what's called here a Kanban board. This is a lightweight project management, task management system. So I'm modeling that behavior as well, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But those are also two separate tools. This one's tracking what I'm doing during the presentation, and this one is tracking what I'm learning during the presentation. Not what you're learning, but what I'm learning, and I'll get to that in a second. Those two acceptable? All right. Yeah.
So it's really helpful what you do in working agreements. Like, do you do that like as a summary before you start your meetings, or does everyone assume you know this project?
Yeah, we start out any big meeting. A big meeting we define as maybe 8 or more people, and we explicitly go through them at Rally. So I'll use Rally as an example through a lot of this. We explicitly go through them. We actually organize our working agreements based on our corporate culture. So we've got 4 pillars of our culture, and we orient the working agreements based on those cultural norms. And we have a set that are just kind of expected. So not our core values, but sort of the norms of how we run meetings. And if anybody steps across one that's kind of, everybody sort of knows, but maybe wasn't explicitly said, we'll just call it out and say, are you okay if we blank? Follow one of our working agreements. Does that cover that?
Are you open with that? Or that's a closed company only?
The working agreements? Yeah, I can get into them. That may be one for a parking lot later on, because I'd want to kind of go a little bit more in depth on it than I think probably I have time now. Okay.
Can I ask a question? So for your Kanban board, do you set a width for I guess you're doing?
Pretty sure I'll cover that right here. Okay. Is that okay?
I guess I was going to ask you, how about the number in the backlog? Do you track that at all?
I'll get into that with WIP too.
Okay, cool.
In fact, if you're game, I may have you come up and demonstrate to everybody some of the work in process ideas. All right, good there? All right. Breathe. Now this is Boulder, so I can get away with doing this. Other cities, maybe not so much. What I want you to do is take everything that's in your mind temporarily, put it aside, okay? I want you to close your eyes. This is a trust exercise too, to some small extent. All right, now focus on your breath. Take a deep breath in. Be mindful of the air coming into your lungs. Let the air out. Feel the air coming out of your lungs, through your nose. Breathe in. Breathe out. Feel the air coming in and out. All right, let's come back together. All right, why did I have you breathe? Other than the fact that it's important, and this is Boulder, I think it's a real metaphor for what does it mean to have a cadence in your company. So very often, we get really busy. You guys are now in a really intense environment where a million things are going to be coming at you. It's important, and what I did there was just a very basic mindfulness technique, just to make you present in the moment, aware of yourself. Because it's in these environments, it's really easy to become aware of everything but yourself. And in this case, aware of your business. The metaphor that I like is working on your business versus working in your business. What do those words mean to you? Working in your business, what does that mean? Yeah, so working in is just the day-to-day doing stuff. Working on your business is kind of the equivalent of mindfulness, what we just went through with the breathing, but applied to your business. So this is where you take a step back and you become self-aware of your business. Not all the crap you have to do, all the tasks you have to do, the 500 emails you feel bad about not answering like I have right now. It's your chance to step back and pay attention to what you're doing inside your business. Business self-awareness. And I think that's really fundamental to the cadences that you create. To give you that time to be mindful, to step back, because you're going to be so busy getting stuff done. One of the examples I use is a couple of years ago I was out in California doing a video webinar. We were right by Stanford University. And at the end of it I went and got dinner at a sushi restaurant kind of on one side of campus. And then I thought, there's this amazing milkshake place downtown in the mall. It's about 1.5 miles. I'll just walk there. It'll be a good walk after a really stressful day. And so I walk in there, I get all up in my head thinking about all the stuff I need to do, all this, that, and the other. And about 40 minutes it seems like goes by like that. And I look up and I'm like, where the hell am I? I had like no idea where I had walked to. Thank God for the iPhone. I was like, oh, wow, okay, I missed my turn about 25 minutes ago. I had no idea where I was. I've seen companies do that constantly with their businesses, where they get so busy, they confuse motion with progress. Just because you're busy, it feels like you're getting stuff done. But unless you have this cadence to get mindful about your business, step back, reflect on it, you can go places very fast and you have no idea where you ended up. I used to do this all the time in college. Now what I want to do is, if you guys are good with those two, you want to breathe some more? Are you good there? Yeah.
Actually, do you, at Rally, do you guys do exercises like that, or are you repeating, or is that something that's more
Oh, I meant to have a sticky here. That was actually one of the things I was experimenting with to see if it helped bring people into a room. We've done things like that. We often will do exercises before, but I've never had the nerve to incorporate meditation into a meeting at Rally. Yep. Yep. It seemed to match well with the metaphor that I wanted to try to get across. So, cool. So good piece of feedback. What other questions here before we move on? Good? All right. All right, daily. Encourage you, we're going to kind of progress now in time scales and level of importance. So I think daily is a really, really critical cadence, especially in this environment. But in any business I work with, I say, if you can do one thing to work on your business, do a daily stand-up or a daily huddle. How many folks here as a team get together every day and go over yesterday and today? Show of hands. Okay, we've got, okay. You may have just volunteered, if you're okay with that. So what daily is about is a real quick, and you have to do them quick or they go totally sideways, a really quick chance as a team to check in. And the format is, here's what I did yesterday, here's what I accomplished, here's what I plan to get done over the finish line today, or here's what I'm working on, but maybe I can't get across the finish line today. And what am I blocked by? And the blocked question is really important. So these are the things that stand in front of you and what you need to get done today. So real quick huddle, you do it standing up, literally standing up, because if you sit down, they take a half an hour, and who's got half an hour to waste on that stuff? If you stand up with a small team, they can go in 5-10 minutes. You get through that. It's really critical because it surfaces all the things that are naturally impeding your motion forward. And it gives you a small chance to stand back and reflect. It's 10 minutes, but you'd be surprised how much gets surfaced and how much reflection you can do just in 10 minutes. We do this at Rally every day. I'm actually involved in 2 different stand-ups throughout the day. We have an executive level one where we, as an executive team, do a stand-up about what's going on in our departments. And then within your departments, we have stand-ups. So like Jay, who runs our engineering team, he may actually go to 3 or 4 stand-ups during a day. He may be drilling in on a single team, like maybe the ops team, something's going on operationally. He'll sit in their daily stand-up. Then he'll go to what we call a Scrum of Scrum stand-up. So that's one level up, where all of our engineering teams get together and talk about what each team is doing. Then he'll go up to the executive one, where he talks about what that entire department's doing and what's going on. So these are techniques that work when you're 3 people and can scale up to when you're thousands of people. which is why I think it's a really important habit to build when you're young in your company days. So just to model this, because I believe in teaching not just by talking, but actually this is kinesthetic knowledge I want to try to get across. I was kind of joking when you raised your hands, but I'd love to have a team come up, the whole team, and go through a stand-up. So I'll kind of coach you through how to do a stand-up, but I want everybody here to kind of see what it's like to do a stand-up. Who's brave? Come on, you guys are entrepreneurial founders. Of course you're brave. All right. Are you guys a whole team? Sorry, I don't know you guys yet. Just two? Okay. Is there a bigger team? Actually, let me ask it this way. What's the biggest team here? Okay. How many folks? If you're willing, please come up. Because it's fun to see this kind of at a little bit bigger scale.
Maybe you're going to get into this, but do you have a recommended or best kind of structure to stand up of it and stand
Yep.
up if there is none?
Yep, that's what we're doing. So what I want you to do, we'll try to make this, are you okay with it being real, where you talked about yesterday? Awesome. What I want you to do, go around in a circle, doesn't matter where you start, sometimes we'll throw golf tees up in the air, stuff like that. And what I want you to do is say, what'd you do yesterday? So this is answering the format question. What'd you do yesterday? What do you plan to do today, or what are you working on today? And what are you blocked by? I highly encourage, for startups especially, because the level of uncertainty you're working in, you have to have, learning happens when you have the safety to admit to others you got an unexpected result. That is sort of, in complexity theory, the definition of learning. If you don't have that safety on your team, you're not going to learn. My belief is startups, it's all about learning faster than your competition. Getting to that thing that works faster than anybody else. And it's not like clocking 100-hour weeks. It's clocking the most number of cycles of effective learning that you can do. One of the things I'm most proud of at Rally is it's never been a kind of 100-hour week, die in the middle of the race kind of culture. It's a marathon. And it's whoever can learn faster, in my experience. Consumer startups sometimes don't follow this because you have random network effects of sort of luck and propagation of, like you get tech crunched. Maybe that has nothing to do with learning, but it probably did a little bit. So there is some asymmetry in consumer, but usually in enterprise, it's about who's learning faster. All right, is that? Oh, yep.
Is there any overlap between the tasks which you put in any of your task management tools like Asana, Production Tracker, with your daily stand-up?
Yeah. What we do in our group, the executive team, it's mostly our calendars because that kind of drives our lives. But for when I go to the team that I'm with where I'm actually doing work, we do it in front of an electronic board, AgileZen, one of our companies. We do it in an AgileZen board. And we all have our iPads because we tend to be all over the place, traveling in different offices. So yeah, that's our prompt to say, this is what I committed to yesterday. It's in the working column. And here's my progress on it. So yeah, I would highly encourage you, if you're managing your company tasks, do this kind of in front of that.
How do you combine a Kanban board with like the emergencies that come every day
Yep.
from all around?
Yeah.
Because the main question is, we're doing Kanban.
Yep.
And the main thing is that working on stuff you have done, planned already is easy from
Yep.
stuff you done. But the emergencies come all around and how do you enter them into the Kanban?
Yeah, usually what we'll do, I'll cover it real quick and I can come back and tracking work. I didn't draw it here, but usually we'll put an expedite lane in at the top, which is the policy that we'll have is that has precedence over anything else on the board. Getting that thing from backlog to done takes precedent over anything else on the board. That's how you design that in Kanban. Others on daily? All right. Weekly. That was an example of kind of the daily sync up. Now, weekly tends to be much more of a planning focus, but still has the review sense. The idea with weekly is you get together. If you're doing it at a big scale, it's kind of where all the departments come together. When you're small, like you guys are, the weekly is all about, okay, what are the 6 things that matter, or the 8 things that matter that we're really focusing on? I would encourage you to, and I'll come to this in the monthly and quarterly, but usually you have 1 to 3 things that you absolutely have to get right over some period of time. So I like starting that weekly cadence out, get together. Now this is maybe a half hour to an hour meeting. And the first thing you talk about is, okay, for the 3 things we have to get right, how are we doing on them? How are they tracking? And again, you go over the same sort of thing of if you have measures on them, report out the measures. If it's all qualitative, just stories, tell stories for 5 or 10 minutes about how it's going. So if like the top thing you have to get right that month is you need to get your lead generation funnel up 10%, then every week you sit down, the first thing you talk about is, okay, what did we do to get our lead generation funnel up 10%? And what did it do? What are the numbers showing us? What are the stories that we're hearing? What are the anecdotes around that? You cover kind of those high-level plans, high-level really important things. And then you can lay out and organize your backlog as a team for the coming week and say, okay, there's 100 things here we could work on. What are the 15 most important ones that we need to get across the finish line this week? Another really important thing that some teams do, and I encourage it, is, especially at your size, start that weekly meeting out with a retrospective. And a retrospective is reflecting back on the last week, which is what worked well, what do you want to change about how we're working together, how we're managing things. I'll do a different one with a retrospective today, which is there's a format, I wish, and what if. So I wish this were the case. What if we did it this way? And that gives you kind of an open set of dialogue, a box, but then you can reflect on what happened last week. So again, this is your chance to sit back, breathe, work on your business, not in it. Reflect on what worked well last week, what you'd want to change, what are the key things you have to get right, how are those tracking, and then plan out your next week's worth of stuff you've got to get, things you have to do, get the most important things done. I don't know, are you guys still doing the 10-10 this summer? Okay. So there's kind of a natural cadence built into the Techstars program to help you kind of in a more group-wise setting kind of reflect on the last week. But as a team, I highly encourage it. Most teams that I know that do this do it Monday morning, kind of first thing they do Monday. Since you guys are kind of running a 7-day, 24-hour clock here, pick whatever day you want. But it should feel to the team like the natural kind of beginning of the next breath. And that's when you want to sit down and do those things. Yeah.
So I've seen, I guess Steve Blank's iCore partner took me through like a little training program on like customer development. And every Friday at 8 a.m. We would reflect basically on what were the hypotheses that were tested, what were the lessons learned, and what's going on next week. So, and as you were saying, for the framework that you're describing, it's like, okay, well, these are our priorities for this upcoming week. Did you ever, or have you ever seen people also, I guess, combine that with what's being tested, or maybe that
absolutely
falls into that?
Yeah, so if you think about another way of thinking about this, instead of what's the 3 things we got to get right, I'll kind of point to this knowledge Kanban now, which is what are the 3 mysteries, or what are the 3 or 2 fundamental leap of faith assumptions we're making that we have to build some data to learn if that's true or if it's total vaporware BS. So that's another thing that you can plan out. It's kind of what I'm doing down here, which I'll get into in a second. But if you want, you can make them not so task-oriented, but make them much more about hypothesis testing, empirical learning. So I encourage you to actually keep track of both of these styles of boards as you're working through your business. Does this one feel accepted? All right, monthly. In a lot of businesses, this is quarterly, not monthly, but
Actually, I have a question.
yeah.
So I might be getting some of my agile terms mixed up here, but is this like in the context of a sprint?
Can be. I'm actually not. If you're doing development, yeah, weekly or every other week can fall into a sprint boundary. I'm actually focusing on Kanban here for you guys because I think 2 weeks is an eternity, especially with what you're going through right now. A week maybe is an eternity. Think about how far you can progress, how much work you can do, how much you can learn in a week. That's why I kind of prefer this more flow of knowledge and work. Also, Scrum tends to not focus so much on the hypothesis running and what are you learning. It tends to focus more on just getting the known things done every other week. But yeah, does that help with that?
Yep.
Yep.
I have a question. Is there some kind of preparation for the weekly meetings? And if so, is there someone in the team dedicated to specifying the agenda?
Usually there'll be a person that kind of is sort of your process person, but eventually maybe one day is your COO or your ops person. What I would encourage you guys from a team standpoint is that whoever groks this is most passionate on the team about getting a cadence established, and the person who just kind of naturally keeps track of stuff, either in your head or really organizationally for the company, should own this process, or at least shepherd it. The whole team should own it, but it generally works better if one person's helping out. And soon I'll hand out a sheet of paper to kind of help you keep track of all of this. Good on the weekly? All right. Monthly. Let me ask this question. How many weeks left to Techstars for you guys? 11. Ah, awesome. You know the answer. Okay. So you've got 11. If you think of the world in weekly cycles, you've got 11 breaths you're going to take before this program's over. Now, I think an important thing to realize is the end of Techstars is just an event.
Yeah.
It's not the end of your company. It's maybe not even really the start of your company. So getting good at these habits, I think, is important. But in the context of where you're at today, you've got 11 of those, slightly fewer of those. This sheet that I'll hand out talks about quarterly planning. For you guys, a quarter, you may want to do it at the business level, but right now I would get used to these habits at a monthly level. But at a monthly level, the thing to think about is, okay, what fairly substantial ball do we want to move over the next month? For some of you, it may be, we've got to crack the nut on how to double our leads coming in. Or we've got this really gnarly technical problem if we don't solve, we don't have a business. These are these really big kind of monstrous things that feel like, this is going to really take some time to get into. So at your monthly, and what I would recommend is it's just take one of your weekly meetings and add 50% of time onto it. Go through your normal weekly cadence and then do the exact same thing at a monthly level. So retrospect, I'll get you in a second, how the last month went. Reflect back on, okay, here's the one thing we had to get really good at over the month. How'd we do on that? Did we move that forward? Did we learn? Did we tackle the stuff that was in our way? And then you can think a little bit about these backlog items, but they're going to be kind of big ones. They're going to be a little bit more vague. And again, I wouldn't spend a ton of time. Don't double your weekly meeting on this, but spend a little bit more time. And that gives you a chance to kind of organize where you're going for the next kind of 4-week breaths that you're going to take in your business. Yeah.
Okay, you may have just answered it, but
okay.
In terms of planning, so that I start a monthly, break it down to weekly, break it down to daily, is it a cop-out to say we've got this monthly goal, and then throw that into the weekly?
No, it's fine. I'm kind of doing this in the progression. It may seem like I'm doing this backwards, but I'm doing this in the progression of what I think is the most important to do. So if you're not doing daily, please start that tomorrow. If you're not doing weekly, I would encourage you to start doing that every week. If that feels like enough, and the level of uncertainty you're in, you're like, I can't even see a month out. Don't worry about this so much, but acknowledge that at some point when your environment settles a little bit, you'll want to take a little bit more time every 4th weekly meeting and think about, look up a little bit higher and go, okay, over the next month, we need to get over here. The other key reason you do these things is there's a natural human bias called retrospective coherence, which is when we get a result, our brain naturally tricks us into thinking that that result is exactly what we expected to have happen. And in that, your brain robs you of the ability to learn. Because you're like, oh, well, of course I expected us to only get like 5% toward our goal on lead gen. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. But if you write these things down weekly, or if you write them down monthly, then as you reflect back and you say, okay, our goal was 48%, we hit 6%, and I wrote this down, and we've got time to reflect on it. Wow, I just learned that we made a kind of a tough guess there. We were really off. What happened? Why'd that happen? And you can do 5 whys and some of these other interrogation techniques. And by writing this stuff down, and at the monthly level, you can really learn sort of macro things. So these are big kind of hypotheses or big learnings for your business. Gives you time to reflect and not lie to yourself. You're not lying, I mean, you're lying to yourself, but your brain's just naturally helping you cope with life as it's doing that to you. But in the theme of a startup being a learning machine, really encourage you guys to write these things down. So that's the main goal for the monthly one, is really to reflect on these big things, which is why if you're doing an effective daily and weekly, you can get away with not doing monthly at first. All right, questions on monthly? Yep. Okay, sounds good. All right, I am going to skip quarterly, and we'll do life of company. Highly encourage you guys to think about, over the life of your company, what do you want out of it? What are the core values that you really desperately want as part of your company? Really important to think about that as founders. What do you individually want? The story that I was telling about the company that we spent quite a ways, spent 16 months building and trying to sell. 2 days before we were ready to sign the documents, the acquiring company backed out. Said, sorry, just forget those last 16 months, which was just awful. It was heart-wrenching. But the reality is that when they structured the deal, they actually pit some of the founders against each other and how the deal was structured. And because each of us, I didn't know what I wanted out of it, really, and I didn't know what anybody else in the team wanted it out of the company, and especially in selling, because that's kind of one of those hallmark moments. It was really brutal, because we were all acting in ways that were clearly non-deterministic to each other. So I highly encourage you to think about, what do you want the culture to be in your company? And then personally, what do you want out of the journey? Because when it gets really hard, these two things really matter a lot. And it's not something that you can really think of sort of on the cuff very well. Okay. Tracking work. That's what I've been doing here. This is a work tracking board called a Kanban board. So if you've noticed, stuff's been going from backlog to doing. The pen is for things that, like I heard up here during the stand-up, I'm waiting on so-and-so for this, I'm blocked on this, but I really can't move it forward. That goes in the pen. Just a holding pen, stuff that you're going to come back to. And then done. When you do these, in the weekly meeting, it's really great to reflect back on everything that's been done, pull it off the board, put it in a Clippy, and then work on your backlog. It just helps you breathe, understand what was part of your business. The other thing that I think is really important, this doesn't cover knowledge. This is just work. But a really important part of a startup is, what are you learning? So for me, the empathize and frame, I'm here, and one of the experiments that I'm doing by talking to you is because I'll be a mentor this summer, is how can I get involved and help you guys as a company? So this is my experiment to learn a little bit more about you before I engage in office hours next week. What am I building and shipping? I'm trying this Kanban format for a presentation like this for the first time. So I'm shipping this today. What I'm really here doing is also I'm testing the concept of an agile business. So we're thinking about offering this as a service to big companies. So I'm here trying to test and measure how well does this resonate, how helpful is this to you. And then once I learn about that, I'll synthesize that and share it with the folks that I work with. So do you see the example here of work versus knowledge? This is kind of customer development, but we've augmented it with design thinking. So empathize and frame, get in people's shoes, get to know them. Build something, ship it. Shipping is important. Test and measure. Think about testing and measuring when you're building. And then learn and share.
Well, I personally like this. I don't know if you did on purpose, but even when you talk about the model, you didn't use it. I assume that it was by trade.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to model the behavior. I could go into 30 years of science behind why this works and go deep into Toyota production system and things like that, but that doesn't serve you. Just model the behaviors. It's easier to learn that way. But if you want to know the science behind it, I'm happy to go into that. And again, the level of uncertainty that you guys are dealing with, I really encourage you to think about not planning, because it's really hard to predict out, even toward the end of the program, where you're going to be. Really focus on steering. And steering is where you take all the data that's available, all the knowledge that's available, and you make the next best action that makes the most sense given where you're at today and what you know. I really encourage you, if you go to an MBA program, often you're going to write this big business plan that predicts things out 3 to 5 years. That's important in getting your thoughts around the mechanics of your business, but when it comes to day-to-day running, Just because the plan says it doesn't mean it's true, especially in younger companies. It just means it was your best guess at the time, and it's highly likely to be wrong. All right, I want to do a fun thing here with WIP. Who's game to do a little experiment? I know folks need to start leaving. Real quick, I just need one person up here. Come on up. All right, WIP, which stands for work in process. The idea here is that you actually want to limit how much you're working on at any one time. So if you stand back a little bit, can I throw a ping pong ball at you?
Sure.
Okay. So imagine you're doing one task, okay? All right, caught it. All right. So now imagine you're doing two tasks at once. Ooh, almost caught it. All right. Now it's fun. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The idea here, limiting what's called work in process, is if you're doing one thing at a time, if you're catching one ping pong ball at a time, you're actually going to be able to catch it. You can sit down now, thanks. So his WIP limit was about 2. He kind of almost caught 2, which I was actually really impressed with. 4, no way. So again, you're in an intense situation. Things are coming at you all the time. Focus to the extent possible on only doing one thing at a time, which is why I was trying to only move one topic at a time. All right, close. I'll hand out this sheet. So this is a, if you want to just pass them around, I'll do one from the back, one from the front. And please just take one per team. I only printed out enough for one per team because this is a team activity. This is a really good canvas to take everything that I just talked about and put it down on a sheet of paper. Now, some of the things on here, this comes from Gazelles, which is a company we've worked with. There's a lot of things on here that are sort of accounting-ish, like talking about revenue, talking about margins, things like that. And you may not be there yet in your business. If you're not, scratch all that stuff out and say, okay, but what measure does matter where we're at in our business? So it may be getting early customers. It may be how much you're pouring into the top of the funnel. It may be other technology issues and risks. So cross all the accounting out and put in there what you think really matters for you at that time. I would encourage you to focus just on the far right-hand side and the far left-hand side. So the left-hand side is your goals, your vision, why you're doing this. The BHAG's important. That's your big, hairy, audacious goal. What do you want to change in the world? Why are you doing this? And then focus on the right-hand side, which is just, here's what we're doing this week and this month. Cross quarter out and write month. Don't worry about quarter for this. Just focus month to month. And that'll help you as a team. This is a starting place. Just because it's on a sheet of paper, don't follow it religiously. Change it. Please change it. Write all over it. Change the format. But this is a good starting place for you guys to kind of think about where you want to go week by week, day by day, month by month with your business. This scales up. We've used this until we were about 150, 200 people. So it can scale up quite a bit. There are companies in the thousands that use this as a schematic. We've actually kind of moved into a more lean approach than this. But these can be very helpful to your business to make sure that you can't lie to yourself and allow yourself to learn. So that is the close. From a retrospect standpoint, if you have time, I understand if you need to scoot off the meeting. Okay. All right. Okay, great. That should have been a working agreement. Leave if you need to leave. So what I can do, if you do have time, I've got a little bit of time. I'm happy to take questions. I don't want to feel like it's I turn into a pumpkin at 1. Or we can dive into the retrospective here, which selfishly is me testing and measuring. Again, I'm modeling behavior. I'm doing a retrospective with you because I want you guys within your own team. So, yeah.
I got a question. I frequently start out the day with a task. Like I know what I need to do.
Yep.
And it'll take a day or 2 days to do it.
Yep.
Then I'll find like a bug somewhere. I have found if I'm going to write up that bug then, or if I'm going to address it later.
Yep.
And I start with all these things come across my plate, and I can say, okay, I can take 5 minutes to tell myself myself to address it later, which will take half an hour.
Yep.
I can find something that'll take 20 minutes, and I can complete it then.
Yep.
And I start finding my day blocked up into 5 minutes. I could remind me to do something half an hour later, 20 minutes that I guess I'll do now.
Yep.
And then I find myself with the task that I had to do, I only got 2 hours for it. Is there a balancing way to throw weight of what's important? And a lot of it, because we're moving so quickly, it's like, okay, what is important? Okay, this needs to get addressed because, you know, and then a lot of it I'm handing off as well. So
Yep.
it's not like, oh, I can do it now. It's like, okay, I have to spend 30 minutes to explain
Right.
to someone that's going to take 2 hours to do it.
Yep. Yeah, there's the way that I look at it is there's a task switching trade-off. So are you an engineering background?
No.
Okay. So I won't use that in an operating system analogy. There's a trade-off between the context switch, like how long is it going to take you to morph your mind into the new task at hand versus doing it in the moment versus delegating it to somebody else. So I would encourage you to think not just about how long is this task going to take me to do, but what's the switching cost on this task?
And that's the thing, because I'm not designing the product. So I'm in there, and to break away all the time,
Yep.
it really messes up my
Yep.
concentration of having a holistic view of what I'm building and
Yep.
also that specific feature.
There's also, I didn't get into it, but within daily, there's sort of an hourly picture too, which is I generally block the first hour to hour and a half of my day for what I call frog time, which is just shit that I don't want to do. Just get it out of the way before the rest of the day. And this is like high interrupt, just not fun on the brain, constant task switching. Get that out of the way in the morning. And then for me, my power hour tends to be from about 4 p.m. till about 7 p.m. That's when I'm sort of really get in the zone. I have kids, which means now my power hour is between 4 and 5, because then I'm off picking them up from school. So between about 3 and 5, I try to block my calendar out to get stuff done. Stuff that I really have to get my mind into it, block everything else out, close my door, turn music on. So I would encourage you to think about where's your power hour and block that power hour off every day. And the discipline, though, the hard thing is making it sacred, meaning is nobody books over it. Usually I have a rule that customers always take first priority. If a sales opportunity or customer wants to talk to me, they have complete priority over my calendar. But other than that, I try to have discipline, although I'm not great at it. I try to have discipline to block those things out. If you want to hand those down for me. Hand those down, and one in the back. Pass those back there. Yep. What other questions? Yeah.
That is the backlog and feeding stuff into the backlog as a team.
Yep.
And I've often found out that it is a challenge as a team to have consistent backlog that is like quality.
Yep.
In terms of expressing like an ask for single part like complaining stuff. Because it's difficult when you write down something like you don't maybe something don't convey exactly what you meant at that time.
Yep.
And forget, and people don't understand what's written on the card.
Yep.
Is there a way do you find that there's a way to formalize stuff, or how do you do that?
Yeah.
As a team?
Usually what I encourage is that one person on the team owns this part of the board. They're the ones, and they don't own it from like they're going to do all the work, but they own it from a consistency, from how things are expressed, and they own facilitating the discussion of ranking things and making sure the right stuff is up there. So I would encourage you to kind of identify one person who cares about the process and one person who cares about the ranking of that box. It can be the same person, but just so you know, that person owns that.
So the question that is correlated to it, because we're doing this in the team, we're 5, and we tend to have a backlog that looks like a giant to-do list where everybody puts his, I gotta do this someday, or this would be a nice idea.
Yep.
And everything. How do you avoid this precise kind of thing where you got a list that is like 100 things long that are better specified, too small or too big?
The thing that you'll realize when you go into a daily, weekly, monthly cadence is it helps you with the granularity of things, because that's really a granularity issue, usually. Big grain things here, these are sometimes called rocks, the big rocks. I mean, the analogy is you take a fish tank, there's 2 ways you can fill it up. You can put the big rocks in first, then the pebbles, then the sand, then the water. get a lot in there. Or you can put the water in there, the sand in there, and then when you try to put the big rock in, it's just a mess.
Yeah, but you don't move the rock across the board, right?
No, you chip away at the rock. But you got to know what the rocks are that you got to deal with every month. Write them on your sheets. Then that allows you to filter this and say, okay, there's 100 things up here. Does this card help us with the one thing we have to get right this week or this month? No? Okay, well, maybe we should not do that. And it's put it, you know, on a, sometimes this will be called the ice box over here, which is stuff, we have our backlog and then we have soon and eventually are our other two columns. I knew I was going to hopefully get through everything today, so I didn't model that behavior. But just put it over there and say, all right now, this isn't serving us to move the one thing this month we have to get right and the 3 things this week we have to get right.